Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most dramatic developments in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. Reports are emerging that Russia's so-called land bridge to Crimea has suffered a massive collapse following a powerful Ukrainian missile strike. This land bridge, often described as a lifeline connecting mainland Russia to the occupied Crimean Peninsula through southern Ukraine, has been crucial for Russian logistics, troop movements, and supplies. Its destruction marks a potential turning point in the war, reshaping not only military strategies but also the geopolitical landscape of the region. For months, Ukraine has been intensifying strikes deep behind Russian lines, targeting critical infrastructure such as depots, command centers, and bridges. But this recent strike has sent shockwaves through Moscow's defense circles. The land bridge, running through the occupied territories of Melitopol, Mariupol, and the southern parts of Zaporizhzhia, has been Russia's main supply artery since the early stages of the full-scale invasion. It allowed the Kremlin to transport troops, ammunition, and fuel to Crimea without depending solely on the Kerch Bridge, which itself has been struck multiple times. According to sources from both Ukrainian intelligence and Western observers, the strike was carried out using long-range precision weapons, possibly Storm Shadow or ATACMS missiles. Satellite images released shortly after the attack show large sections of roads and railway tracks destroyed. Several military convoys were reportedly hit, and fuel depots exploded, creating massive fireballs visible from miles. The footage circulating online shows columns of smoke rising from the area, suggesting severe secondary explosions. For Russia, this isn't just a logistical problem. It's a blow to its prestige and control over southern Ukraine. Ukraine's goal has always been clear: cut off Russia's access to Crimea and make its occupation unsustainable. By targeting the land bridge, Ukraine aims to isolate Russian forces on the peninsula and disrupt their resupply routes. Without the bridge, Russian troops in Crimea and the southern front lines could face significant shortages in fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements. Analysts are calling this a strategic chokehold, and if Ukraine maintains pressure, it could force Russia into a defensive retreat from key areas. The timing of this strike is also significant. Winter is approaching, and both armies are preparing for the next phase of the war. For Ukraine, disrupting Russian logistics now could cripple Moscow's ability to maintain operations during the colder months. For Russia, repairing such massive infrastructure under constant threat of attack is nearly impossible. The Kremlin has poured billions into building and maintaining these supply lines, but Ukraine's recent advances in long-range strike capabilities have rendered much of that investment vulnerable. There's also a symbolic side to this event. The land bridge was often presented by Russian propaganda as proof of their permanent control over southern Ukraine. Russian state media hailed it as a sign of victory and stability, a physical manifestation of their grip over the region. But now, with images of crumbled roads and burning convoys circulating online, that illusion is fading fast. Even pro-Russian bloggers have expressed frustration, calling the attack a catastrophic failure of defense and questioning the preparedness of Russian air defense systems. Eyewitnesses from nearby towns reported a series of loud explosions throughout the night. Some said the ground shook repeatedly as missiles hit their targets. The attack appears to have been coordinated, striking multiple points simultaneously to maximize damage and hinder repair efforts. Ukrainian officials have remained tight-lipped about the exact weapons used, but they did hint that new long-range systems were involved, possibly a reference to recently supplied Western munitions. In Moscow, the reaction has been tense. Russian officials initially tried to downplay the incident, claiming the damage was minor and repair crews were already on site. However, satellite imagery and on-the-ground videos tell a different story. Entire sections of the railway have been ripped apart, bridges over key rivers collapsed, and fuel tanks burned for hours. Military analysts estimate it could take months to restore full functionality, if it's even possible under current conditions. The psychological impact on Russian troops stationed in southern Ukraine cannot be overstated. For soldiers dependent on those supply routes, the realization that their main lifeline has been destroyed is demoralizing, Morale has already been low amid ongoing Ukrainian counterattacks, and this development could further erode confidence in the command structure. Ukrainian forces have been quick to exploit this, intensifying pressure across multiple fronts, particularly near Tokmak and Melitopol. Internationally, this strike has drawn mixed reactions. Western nations have praised Ukraine's ability to strike high-value targets and disrupt Russian operations. Many see it as proof that continued military support is yielding tangible results. Meanwhile, Russia's allies, such as China and Iran, have remained silent, perhaps wary of associating themselves too closely with what appears to be a significant Russian setback. In contrast, NATO officials have highlighted this attack as a demonstration of how advanced weaponry and intelligence sharing can shift the balance in modern warfare. The economic implications are also substantial. The land bridge wasn't just a military supply route, it was also used to transport goods, energy, and personnel to Crimea. Its destruction could lead to severe shortages on the peninsula, driving up prices and creating unrest among residents. Crimea has already faced rolling blackouts and supply disruptions, after earlier attacks on energy infrastructure. Now, with both the Kerch Bridge and the land bridge compromised, Crimea risks isolation once again, a scenario reminiscent of the early days of the war. The Kremlin now faces difficult choices. It can attempt to repair the damaged routes, which would require massive resources and expose repair crews to continued strikes. Or it can shift supply operations to maritime routes across the Black Sea, which are equally vulnerable to drone and missile attacks. Either way, Russia's logistical situation has become far more complicated. Military experts say that the loss of the land bridge effectively turns Crimea into a logistical trap, making any large-scale operations from the peninsula highly risky. For Ukraine, this success serves as both a military and moral victory. After months of grinding warfare and slow progress, such a major achievement boosts national morale and sends a clear message to allies and enemies alike. Ukraine can strike deep, and it can hit what matters most. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated that the liberation of Crimea remains one of the ultimate goals of this war. By crippling the land bridge, Ukraine has taken one major step toward making that goal achievable. Still, the road ahead remains challenging. Russia is likely to retaliate with missile barrages and intensified attacks on Ukrainian cities. Historically, after suffering major setbacks, Moscow has responded by targeting civilian infrastructure, power grids, water supplies, and transportation hubs. Ukraine's air defenses will be tested once again in the coming weeks. The government has already urged civilians to prepare for potential blackouts and renewed waves of drone and missile attacks. Meanwhile, the Russian media landscape is showing cracks. Some commentators have begun openly questioning the effectiveness of Russia's defensive strategy in the south. Prominent military bloggers, who once served as cheerleaders for the invasion, are expressing frustration over repeated failures to protect vital assets. Even within the Russian parliament, whispers of discontent are surfacing as lawmakers face growing pressure from families of soldiers deployed in the region. This latest strike also exposes a deeper issue: Russia's over-reliance on long, vulnerable supply chains. Military experts have pointed out that the Kremlin stretched its logistics too thin, occupying vast territories without securing stable and protected routes. The collapse of the land bridge is a direct consequence of that overextension. Ukraine has cleverly exploited this weakness, using precision strikes to dismantle Russia's ability to sustain its occupation. There are also reports suggesting that partisan activity played a role in the strike's success. Resistance groups operating in occupied territories may have provided critical intelligence to Ukrainian forces, identifying exact coordinates of fuel depots and troop movements. Coordination between local resistance and the Ukrainian military showcases the growing effectiveness of hybrid warfare, combining local networks, cyber operations, and advanced weaponry to deliver devastating blows. As the dust settles, the broader implications of this strike become clearer. Strategically, it reshapes the battlefield in southern Ukraine. Politically, it weakens Russia's narrative of control and stability. Psychologically, it boosts Ukraine's confidence and the faith of its allies. And economically, it puts additional strain on Russia's already struggling war economy. Rebuilding the land bridge would require vast resources and engineering capacity, both of which are in short supply due to sanctions and the ongoing drain of the war effort. There's growing speculation that Ukraine might follow up this strike with new offensives aimed at further isolating Crimea. Some analysts believe that if Ukrainian forces can advance toward Melitopol or cut through the remaining routes along the coast, they could completely sever Russia's connection to the peninsula. That would not only trap Russian forces in Crimea, but also put immense pressure on Moscow to consider negotiations from a weakened position. However, it's important to remember that wars are unpredictable and both sides are capable of surprising moves. Russia still retains significant air and missile power, and it may attempt to rebuild defensive lines or open new fronts to divert Ukrainian attention. But one thing is certain: the myth of Russia's unbreakable control over the south has been shattered. As global reactions continue to pour in, it's evident that this event will be studied for years to come. Military academies and strategists will analyze how Ukraine, with limited resources but high precision, managed to dismantle one of Russia's most critical supply routes. The lessons here go beyond the immediate conflict. They reveal the changing nature of modern warfare, where information, mobility, and precision often outweigh sheer numbers and brute force. In the coming weeks, we can expect to see intensified debates about how this strike affects the overall direction of the war. Will Russia double down and attempt to reassert control, or will it gradually shift to a more defensive posture, consolidating what territory it can still hold? Much will depend on Ukraine's ability to sustain momentum and the continued flow of Western support, both in weapons and intelligence. For now, the destruction of Russia's land bridge to Crimea stands as one of the most significant blows Moscow has suffered since the full-scale invasion began. It demonstrates that no part of the occupied territories is truly safe, and that Ukraine's determination to reclaim its land remains unshaken. The world is watching closely as this new chapter unfolds, and the outcome could redefine not just the future of this war, but the entire balance of power in Eastern Europe. That's all for today's detailed look-in to the collapse of Russia's land bridge after Ukraine's massive missile strike. The situation remains fluid, and updates are expected as both sides react and reposition. Stay tuned for more in-depth analysis and updates as the story develops. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay informed about the latest news and insights from the battlefield.